My name is Roman Papaduk, and I have the honor of serving as Chairman of the Board of Directors of the World Affairs Councils of America. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I welcome all of you to tonight's special event featuring His Excellency President Petro Poroshenko, President of Ukraine. President Poroshenko is in town to attend President Obama's Nuclear Security Summit, and we are delighted that he has taken the opportunity to use this platform provided by the World Affairs Councils of America to make a major policy address. Joining us in presenting tonight's event are our co-organizer, the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, and our co-hosts, including the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, the United States Institute of Peace, the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, the Yurkiw Family Fund, the New International Leadership Institute, Winter Auto Group headed by John Hanansky, the Congressional Ukraine Caucus, the Senate Ukraine Caucus, and the Embassy of Ukraine. Tonight's program is divided into two parts. President Poroshenko will speak for approximately 30 minutes. Following his presentation, the President will answer questions that have been submitted by the audience in written form. I would note that tonight's event is being live streamed, and I would have a special welcome to those in the international and national audiences that are joining us tonight. In addition, I would like to acknowledge and welcome all the members of the World Affairs Councils throughout the United States that have traveled here tonight to be with us. That's a special treat for us to see everybody at this very special event. Finally, I'd like to just extend our apologies and appreciation for all your patience for the delay in the start of this program, but I know we're going to have a very exciting program, and I'm sure the wait was well worth it. At this time, I'd like to call upon Bill Clifford, President and CEO of the World Affairs Councils of America.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you, Roman, for your terrific leadership as chair of the World Affairs Councils of America's National Board of Directors, and especially for bringing together all of the partners and Ukraine Embassy friends to make this program possible tonight. And thank you, Ambassador Chali, for your and your team's tremendous work on making this event possible. This afternoon, here in this room, policy experts and former ambassadors to Ukraine spoke at a forum focused on the military, political, and economic dimensions of the conflict with Russia, and equally importantly, on the humanitarian crisis that stems from it, which has affected some 3.7 million Ukrainians, with hundreds of thousands of children and the aged most at risk. I wish to congratulate Nadia McConnell, President of the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, and our co-organizer for the forum and the audience dialogue it stimulated. The World Affairs Council's national membership of 95 councils, nonprofit, nonpartisan organizations across the United States has been keenly following the developments in Ukraine. And we have featured the country and its challenges at our annual national conference here in D.C. last November. Dozens of council leaders from more than 20 states, from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, and even Alaska are here tonight. I invite my colleagues and the rest of the audience to prepare questions on the cards in your program that you can hand to our staff at the start of Q&A with our most distinguished speaker, whom it is my honor to introduce to you now. Before becoming president, Petro Poroshenko served in several top government positions, including Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and as Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. You can see his full bio in your program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please rise to welcome His Excellency, the President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko.
Distinguished audience, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, that's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight and to see so many friends of Ukraine. This is especially important for me to be in the Congress building, where I have an honor to have a speech on the Congress and Senate on the 18th of September, year 2014. That's an event for the whole of my life. And that's an honor which was demonstrated, the very important symbol of support which was demonstrated in the United States Congress for my country. and for the people of Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let me start with a word of gratitude. And I'm grateful to the United States government for standing by Ukraine's side over the last 2 years, the hardest 2 years in the history of my country. I'm grateful to the Ukrainian American community, which has been supporting Ukraine so actively in so many ways. And I'm grateful to all the people of goodwill who stood with Ukraine and extended their financial, in-kind, and moral support. This support is vitally important for me and for the people of Ukraine. Dear friends, since I visited America last time, Ukraine has effectively stopped Russian offensive. The price we have paid is striking. Almost 10,000 people have died. Over 2,700 Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian servicemen, were killed by fire of combined Russian and militant forces. This number exceeds the US military losses in Afghanistan for the last 15 years. 1,750,000 refugees, internally displaced persons, lost their homes in the Donetsk and Lugansk region and moved in other regions of Ukraine. And me as a president, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian local authorities should find out for them shelter, houses, jobs, education for their children, organize everything. But having very strong expectation and hope that in the very near future, 1,750,000 Ukrainians will have an opportunity to come back to their native land in Donetsk. 7% of Ukrainian territory is occupied. Of the 20% of Ukrainian economy and industrial output is seized or destroyed. 19 months after we initiated the Minsk process, I still receive reports about losses and shelling of our position in the front line every single day. Every morning I have a report from Chief of the General Staff, General of the Ukrainian Army, Poroshenko. And unfortunately, every day we have from 50 to 100 shelling per day. Russia continues sending troops, heavy weapons and ammunition into Ukraine a few times a week. Only since the January the 1st year 2016, Russian trains and trucks full of supplies have illegally crossed uncontrolled part of Ukrainian-Russian border over 80 times since 1st of January. Russia's proxy in Donbass still heavily impede the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to access to all areas under their control and verify the ceasefire and withdrawal of the weapons. They do not allow them of access to the uncontrolled part of Ukrainian-Russian border, just to check and to demonstrate and to inform independently the whole world what's going on the occupied territory. This situation is not conducive to holding local election if militant-controlled areas of Donbass, which are key importance for further progress in the settlement. And Russia keeps using an escalation card whenever it wants to push a preferred for Russia scenario. It keeps supporting militants in Donbass as it wants to have a permanent leverage on Ukraine. Russia also used human lives as a trading chip. After months of negotiation, we still cannot get over 120 Ukrainians from captivity in Donbas. International Committee of the Red Cross is bent to visit them, as well as to search about 800 Ukrainians missing persons. The Kremlin has gone even further. At least 11 Ukrainian citizens have become a political prisoner in Moscow, in Russia. Farce trial, unjust verdict, and the legal detention of hero of Ukraine, member of Ukrainian Parliament, a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, Nadia Savchenko, who stayed there for almost 2 years doing nothing but defending their land on Ukrainian land as a Ukrainian officer. 2 years. And Oleg Sentsov and Kolchenko and many others are just appalling. Some of them, including Nadia Savchenko, in an absolutely critical health condition. But this factor has not meaning for Moscow, which still do not allow, despite of the promises of the Foreign Minister of Russia, Mr. Lavrov, to give an access to Ukrainian doctors for the independent inspection of Nadia, rejecting access of the German doctors, and rejecting access of the doctors from the International Committee of the Red Cross. We have approved the sanction list against those individuals who had partaken in the farce trials against Ukrainian political prisoners in Russia, so-called Savchenko-Sentsov list, very similar to the Magnitsky list. And we accept that our American and European partners join this my initiative. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine remains committed to the implementation in full all Minsk agreement. This is the only option for the peaceful settlement on the table now. We are keen to unlock the political process and hold the local election in Donbas. However, this election is only possible if Russia implements the security provision of Minsk arrangement and does not manipulate with the phrase holding local election within line with Ukrainian legislation and international standards. Free and fair election means that election should be free and election should be fair. We cannot accept legitimizing the occupation of the Donbas through the farce election or Russian understanding of free and fair election, which has nothing to do with the democratic standards. We have an exact criteria of the OEC. What does it mean free and what does it mean fair? And this election should be accepted by the whole world. The election can be possible if the international community brokers deploying the enhanced heavily armed OEC police mission in Donbas to ensure security before, during, and after election for providing and securitized the transition period. Can you imagine anybody can go and making campaign when we have thousands of the Russian troops on the street? And nobody had access to the independent media because it simply not exists on this territory. And not exist an independent election commission. And 1,750,000 Ukrainians living there have no right to vote. We never accept. this Russian standard of democracy. We start working towards eventual restoration of Ukraine control of Ukrainian-Russian border, uncontrolled part. And this is a very important condition for having free and fair election. Not delivering Russian tanks, which have now, can you imagine, on the very small territory, Russia delivered more than 750 Russian tanks, more than 1,500 Russian artillery systems, echelons of the ammunition. What for? Everybody understands that. And of course, this does not increase the security in the region. The recipe for the settlement is rather simple as that. What is not simple is changing Russia's attitude and making it to leave Ukraine alone. Dear friends, there are systemic and large-scale violations of human rights in Crimea. International organizations signal this fact in their report. The occupation regime targets everyone who shows dissent, especially Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar, who support sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The Russian occupation regime has launched over 130 criminal cases only against Crimean Tatar, including a case to ban their main organization, Mejlis. 21 Crimean Tatar have been kidnapped. 3 Crimean Tatar found dead. 9 Crimean Tatar is still missing. Over 20,000 Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar were forced to leave the peninsula. And Russia heavily militarized Crimea. It seeks to deploy nuclear weapons there too. This is Russian understanding of the security in the region. I speak about this for the very clear reason. I came here to participate in the Nuclear Security Summit. I have an honor to be the president of the state which made a unique contribution to the nuclear security in the world. In 1994, Ukraine abandoned the third largest nuclear weapons in the world. At first nuclear security summit in year 2010, under leadership of the President Obama, we Ukrainians refused from the stockpile of highly enriched uranium and have implemented our pledge so far. As of today, Ukraine remains among the key contributors to the success of the Obama Nuclear Security Initiative, and I'm proud of that. What did we get in response? We got a security assurance under the 1994 Budapest Memorandum about sovereignty of my country, about territorial integrity of my country, and about independence of my country. Very clear. Give up nuclear weapons, receive security guarantee. Sounds good, isn't it? But what has it turned to be in reality? Russia simply defied its assurance to Ukraine and committed a direct armed aggression my state. The Ukrainian patriots are losing their lives defending same values that are dear to America and to Europe. We are of one blood, we are of one mind, we are of one values, democratic values. We Ukrainians are entitled to call upon the Western guarantors under the memorandum to take all possible efforts to restore the international justice and order, to help us in our battle for survival and independent, democratic European future. I believe that there is a real chance for the President Obama to mark his presidential term with the settlement of the conflict in Donbass. Dear ladies and gentlemen, everybody understands now it's a very difficult time, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole nation. The mankind faces many problems: terrorism, growing radicalism, xenophobia, migration and refugee crisis, climate changes. The world is tempted to choose pragmatism over values, self-isolationism over the courage, and appeasement over the peace. Many think that it's just a matter of time that the dust settles in Ukraine and things will get back to the old normal life, old normal in Europe. Frankly speaking, I don't think it's going to happen. The old normal is over. And I recognize it or not, but the West has a problem. A large nuclear state with an inferiority complex, with a hateful attitude, with a total disregard of the common values, agreed principles and norms. Sorry. That's an Apple Watch. And this problem will not go away by itself. Russia is not just rejecting Europe. It's trying to build up an alternative Europe based on the alternative values. Tyranny instead of democracy, intolerance instead of respect, and a zero-sum game instead of win-win. As Russia tears Ukraine apart physically, it tears Europe apart politically. It does it best to promote Euroscepticism and feed many anti-EU parties throughout the continent, in every single European member state, just to make Europe weaker, disintegrated, just to bring crisis in Europe. Russia is fight isolationism, become a factor in the world without the world noticing it. It's not about Russia and the West being unclear about their intention in Europe. It is about Russia and the West having opposite intention for Europe. The West wants a circle of trust, and we Ukrainians feel that. Russia allegedly put the circle of domination. It was not a humiliation from the West and allegedly put Russia on a defense line. It was lack of fear in the West that was Russia's biggest humiliation, and Moscow is trying to get a compensation for it. Yesterday in Transnistria, yesterday in Georgia, in Abkhazia, in Ossetia, today in my country, in Ukraine, today in Syria. Whose turn will be next? Where Russian troops, Russian Navy, or Russian Air Force can appear? Development of the situation demonstrates the complete crisis of the post-war security system and demonstrate that there is not existing any red lines for Russia. Let's should be open for that. Let's be prepared for that. Let's be effective to defend our countries our values, and our world. I'm absolutely sure that it is a time to face this reality and find proper response in this situation. Dear friends, we should realize that the world will not be the same again. What it will be like depends on a number of factors. The most important factor for me, Ukraine should be successful. We cannot give any chance to Russia that we lose this battle, not only on the east of my country and not only in Crimea. What shall we do to secure this success? First, we shall to establish peace in Ukraine. Ukraine wants it because that's her chance to survive. The West wants it because it cannot feel comfortable while the neighbor that shares the same value is bleeding for choosing them. This is only one reason. Choice of Ukrainian people. European choice. And Russia can be forced into it. By what mechanism? We are not waiting the NATO troops on Ukrainian land. My army defends my country very effectively. We have an effective mechanism to motivate Russia to sit at the table of negotiation. And the name of this mechanism? Sanction. It's working. Despite the very negative prognosis of the skeptics, it's working. And Russia paying a huge price for not sitting at the table negotiation. The Kremlin thinks that it is reaching its goal in Ukraine at Ukraine's cost. Dearly for Ukraine, cheaply for the West. If the West lifts sanctions, the Kremlin's wish will come true. Ukrainian blood means cost nothing. Killing Ukrainian will go without any punishment. That's a question of values. Can anyone in the West accept that? I am an optimist. I am absolutely sure this is not possible. Sanctions are the only line in the sand that the West drew after year 2014. It is the only line between good and evil drones in the context of this war. And if there is no line anymore, then what's the difference between the good and evil? Do we really want the world devoid of political boundaries? Do we want the world where one can grab other nations' land, kill thousands, dozens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and stay unpunished? Therefore, without sustainable peace in Donbass, sanctions must stay in place. Without restoring Ukrainian sovereignty over Crimea, sanctions must stay in place. Without a new Russian attitude, sanction to the global security, sanctions must stay in place. Anything less, my dear friend, would be a compromise at the cost of values and a cost of justice. And the right signal is that if you pursue the aggressive policy, no one will deal with you. And if the perpetrator keeps killing and striking instantly, it does not mean that the sanctions do not work and must be lifted. It means completely opposite. The sanction in this situation should be strengthened. We should not repeat the mistake of year 2008. Most of you will remember this situation when the West decided that Russia got what he wanted and would become a quiet now. We expect that in the year 1991, 1992, 1993, 2008, that was a mistake. That never happened. The thing about today's Russia is seek domination, not compromise. They don't believe in win-win. They want Ukraine down and the West out. This is the only way how they think they go up. Your worst fears are their Russian plan A. Second, we shall ensure the sustainable transformation of my country. That's the primary Ukrainian responsibility. No question. No question about that. As we have been defending our country last 2 years, we have been also implemented a broad reform package. A lot has been done so far. First of all, as a president and as a commander-in-chief of Ukrainian armed forces, I can assure you, for the last 19 months, we built up absolutely new and effective Ukrainian army. I can give you a very important story. When I was elected as the president and have a contact with our partners, asking about the military support of my armed forces, I received an answer, no. Because your army is corruptive, and because your army is filled by the FSB agent. For such a short period of time, we demonstrated that the new, transparent, effective, very strong and very patriotic Ukrainian army can stop Russian aggression and can release 2/3 of the occupied Donbass. Ukrainian army before has a 7% level of support of Ukrainian people. Today they have almost 80% of the level of support and 80% level of the trust. This is the symbol of the changes in my country. And the Russia propaganda, this is the complete and important part of the Russian hybrid war, distributed throughout the world on the Russian money, completely different messages. We have made first but crucial blow against the corruption. The capital renovation of anti-corruption institutional system has been finalized already. From now, our priority goal is to make it functional and operational. And I believe that the appointment of the new, highly professional, responsible, well-trusted Prosecutor General after the day before yesterday, the Parliament resigned, the Prosecutor General would be trigger a new page in the anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. But most important thing, we completely rebuilt the system. The special anti-corruption prosecutor, which was appointed on the absolutely transparent competition, have a full level of trust of the society, and he is the only person, and his team has a power to demonstrate the fighting against corruption, and he is completely independent. And we're launching several criminal cases against ministers, governors, members of parliament. That's the symbol. Nobody has an umbrella against investigation on the corruption charges. We create the special anti-corruption electronic declaration. And every chief of the police, governor, minister, member of parliament should explain publicly and transparently where from he takes his villa, plane, expensive cars. We never have it before, and we launched it just 2 weeks ago. And I'm absolutely sure it's work. Our parliament worked for that. We create the structure. Last week, we elected the chief of this agency, Special Agency for Preventing Corruption. And this is a very important institution, together with the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. But just this night, take a judge in Odessa region for taking a bribe for 500,000. He was not prepared because under the Constitution he has a judge's immunity. And I am initiated the special constitutional reform on the judicial system to lift this immunity. Can you imagine that yesterday when the special anti-corruption detective arrested them, they opened the fire against the detective. But that is also the symbol of the situation that we really change the state. We have managed to stabilize economic and financial situation. Can you imagine that exactly 1 year ago, our golden currency reserve was 0. Today, after 1 year of the most critical year in our history, when we spend 5% of our GDP to the national security and defense, when we have a disastrous situation with the prices on the commodity, which is the main product of Ukrainian export. From 0, we now have a golden currency reserve, 13 billion. That is the demonstration. Can you find any country in the world that during the war we reduced the budget deficit from the 12% to the 3%? This is Ukraine. We have an energy monopolist, Naftogaz, who has a 130 billion deficit which was subsidized from the state. This year, after energy reform, and Minister of Energy is together with us, with my delegation, we have a 0 deficit in 1 year. First time in the 25 years of our history. We seriously improved public spending. We have cleaned up our banking system, which never happened before, to make it transparent and more resilient. We have made a good progress in deregulation, which significantly eased the registration of business. We have streamlined the tax system. We have taken hard but important decision on the energy sector. Why it's so important? Because all the time we were under blackmailing, under pressure of Russia. What we're talking, what is the essence of the reform in the energy sector we have made? Energy independence. And all decades of keeping Ukraine on the gas needle, now Russia is knocking on our door asking, would you be so kind to buy some of our gas? No, we are happy. We're buying from Europe. That is what we are looking for. Because the gas and energy corruption was feeding the previous government, the previous president, not anymore. And we do it in the very difficult condition. We have launched a new police, which is deemed to become a pillar for trust of the Ukrainian society. Our inspiration was drawn from the United States Police, and I'm proud that policemen from California come to be an instructor for our new policemen. Do you know the results? Beforehand, people trust to old militia less than 5%. Having in mind that this is quite a big number of people, that was the policeman, the militiaman himself, and members of their family. Nobody anymore. Can you imagine that today the level of trust, for the very short period of time, for the less than a year, the level of trust of Ukrainian people to the police is up to 70%. Beforehand, people avoiding the contact, and now they find it out protection, reliability, transparency. This is the very important symbol of the new Ukraine. By the way, we have an extremely successful cooperation with our armed forces. Several times a year, I come to our Yavoriv training center, having joint training exercise with the participation of Ukrainian, American, Canadian, British, and some European countries, soldiers, for the effective communication. We never have it before. Now, battalion after battalion, we have joint training exercises. demonstrating that we are effective, building up the trust between our country. We have stepped up onto the public service reform. We have introduced the electronic government. A lot still to be done. And I will do my utmost. The drive for reform is there. One may consider the latest governmental crisis a challenge. I consider a chance. We have to come out with more resilient to internal and external shocks. By the way, I'm expecting that in an hour, a new coalition in Ukrainian parliament appeared. And they proposed a new candidate for the prime minister. And I'm absolutely sure that the exit from the parliamentary crisis is already very close. Most probably happen this week. That's why I insist on clear principle for the formation of the new government, the coalition in the parliament, rising up the level of trust to the government and to the parliament, no less even providing and implementing very painful reform. We should pay this price to reform my country. And that's why I insist on the clear principle, no less important the clear program for the government. I insist that this program would be based on the IMF commitment, on our obligation in association agreement with the European Union, with the anti-corruption fight, by the way, very important, Minsk process implementation. That's what I'm waiting both from the parliament and from the government. So we don't give up, despite the pressure we face every single day on external and internal front. Because this is exactly Putin's scenario. Understanding that nobody supports him. He does not have any opportunity for the offensive operation on the east of my country. He opened a new front, internal front, in attempt to destabilize Ukraine. And I insist, we must not give him not one single chance. At the same time, it is critical for the West does not give up on Ukraine either, and this is a third. Russia's war against Ukraine has proven that weakness provoked the aggression, while the strong country can deter a body. It is therefore vital that our partners help us become strong in all terms, politically, economically, militarily. And as I said before, we have been able to stop Russian offensive on the ground. We got a lot of support from our partners, and yet I couldn't never explain one thing for myself and for my compatriots: reluctance of the international community to supply weapons to legitimate Ukrainian government and regular Ukrainian army, which hold the line against the attack on the international order. I am absolutely sure it's a time to revisit this attitude. Every effort applied to protect Ukraine is an investment in the long-term security of the West and sustainability of the democratic values. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a time of global weakness. There is a thing that counts more than anything else: leadership. It's a privilege and heavy burden. Not everyone wants it. Not everyone deserves it. There are so many reasons not to carry it: indifference, fatigue, self-doubt. And there is only one reason to carry it: you should have it in your blood. There is a time of doubt. In this time, I urge America to be strong and to believe in herself, just like people of the goodwill worldwide keep believing in America. Please do not let pragmatism make you forget about values, with freedom being at the top of them. Don't let America become a small-minded. Ukraine highly appreciates a bond with the United States. The American leadership has been very important for the progressive reform in my country. The United States' support has been critical for their successful resistance to the Russian aggression. It is a high time to boost Ukraine-US bilateral dialogue in form and content. It is also a time to upgrade our strategic alliance and to channel our intense cooperation in defense and security sector into a comprehensive bilateral security agreement. I believe that this would be to benefit of all. And dear friends, Ukraine fights is a fight for freedom. And this fight continues. People die so that freedom doesn't. I know that Ukraine has a timing problem. In a disillusioned world, she chose not the best time to become free. That's true. But we don't have another way out. The Bible said, the Spirit breathes where He will. In today's world, the spirit of freedom breathes in Ukraine. Please support it. Please support Ukraine. And thank you. І слава Україні!
You are a true rock star. You suggested that Ukraine has not received the proper support under the Budapest Memorandum signed by the United States and Russia that provided security assurances to Ukraine. And some of our presidential candidates have suggested increasing support beyond maintaining sanctions. What package would you be satisfied with from the U.S. and international community supporting Ukraine in the conflict with Russia?
Look, first of all, what I'm feeling here in the United States, not only in Washington, I have a very strong support of the American people, undoubtedly. This is very important to feel for every single Ukrainian. During my meeting with during my speech in the Congress, meeting with the congressmen and senator, we have a very strong bipartisan support of Ukraine. We value it very much. And we have an effective cooperation with the United States government and the United States president. What was the problem from the very beginning? I can be absolutely open with you. It was lack of trust. Because all the time, we don't have enough trust for the military technical cooperation. Look, but after Revolution of Dignity, after 2 years success of our army to stop the Russian troops, the biggest military machine on the European continent, stop them. It seems to me that we have enough trust already to increase the level of our cooperation. This is very simple. That's what we need. If anybody asks that we need tanks, no, we don't need tanks. If anybody said that we need artillery, no, we have enough artillery. We are a modernized European country who can produce it. Yes, we need some American technology for the electronic warfare, for the communication. Just Russia simply should not know what our battalion commanders speak about. Very simple. And you have this technology. Excuse me, does it lethal weapons? Come on. This is a defensive technology, and we are effectively, and at the same time, my soldiers fighting with Russia with the weapons of the 20th century, and Russia use most modern weapons they have in their disposal with the 21st century. What is the difference? What is the price for this gap in technology? Life of my soldiers. I think this is unfair. And that's why tomorrow I will have a meeting with the main American producer in the military industry sector. And I'm very optimistic that we have a great improvement in our cooperation in the security sector. Why? I tell you the truth. It is important. It is impossible even to be the president of the country in a state of war and not to be an optimist. Being pessimistic, you never win the battle. Ukraine will win, no doubt.
Europe is going through a crisis marked by terrorism and historic migration flows, and there's some concern about expanding the EU's membership as seen by the planned referendum next week in the Netherlands regarding Ukraine's membership. What can you say to convince the Danes and the EU in general about a future role for Ukraine in Europe?
Look, this is what I told in my speech. Cooperation between Ukraine and the European Union is a very simple principle. Win-win. Ukraine is a 43 million country, a huge market for the European Union. European Union is a more than 500 million market for the Ukrainian producer. We should have a several level of freedom. When we're talking about the association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, who can be against that? Easy access to the market, development of the business. Who can be against that? Putin. Why? Because he's trying to manipulate the fact and connect it. Ukraine with the migration crisis. Come on. Ukraine has 1,700,000 internally displaced persons and not sending one single person as a refugee to Europe. We demonstrate the effectiveness for tackle this problem. Come to us and learn how we can do that. What Russia want? The Russia want to afraid Europeans. I'm very happy about the last results of the EU-Turkey summit. What is the results? They stopped attempt of Russia to blackmailing all European Union people. Come on. If anybody goes illegally, because of a readmission agreement, we are ready to accept them back and to treat them properly. They do not create you the problem, because the purpose of being in Syria for Russia is just to establish several military or naval or air force bases for Russia, completely change the security climate in the Mediterranean, and second, to ignite, to stimulate the refugee flow to European Union. Very simple. We don't allow Russia to blackmail in Ukraine. We don't allow Russia to blackmail in European Union. We don't allow Russia to disintegrate Europe, because this is what we believe in: the freedom, the democracy, the principle, the values, which is completely unacceptable for this Russian leadership.
Thank you. I'm going to mail you these because we won't get through them all. But I have to say, in this stack, by far there is one subject that is the most sensitive and popular, I guess. In recent article, and this question comes particularly from a Wesleyan University student in Connecticut. He's Ukrainian. In a recent article in Kyiv Post, a Harvard-educated Ukrainian CEO has accused state bodies in blocking and stalling the reforms in large state-owned enterprises. Specifically, he named state security apparatus and prosecutors as the problem. What are you planning to do about these agencies so that they can help advance reform rather than stall or block it?
This is very simple. They are absolutely right. And the symbol that we live in a completely different country is the rising up the influence of the civil society. civil society launch a process for resignation of the general prosecutor. And within a very short period of time, despite of the absolute independence of the general prosecutor, despite of the all this constitutional guarantee, I personally invite the general prosecutor and ask to resign. Why? Because this is the demand of the civil society. This is the demand. We should build up the trust. What is the reform which already happened? The General Prosecutor Office is not anymore responsible for the fighting against corruption. We take all this responsibility and create absolutely special and independent anti-corruption prosecutor office, which is not under influence of the General Prosecutor Office at all. Now, we're initiating the general inspection inside the General Prosecutor Office. Unfortunately, we need for that the legislative changes, but I'm absolutely sure that the Parliament support me. We create, at least we should fulfill the demand of the Constitution and remove all the investigation from the General Prosecutor Office, creating, and we have a law already for that, the National Investigation Bureau. And the responsibility of the General Prosecutor Office would not be anymore for the investigation. We should understand that this is not dependent on the person, this is dependent on the system. And we should reform the Soviet-style system of the Prosecutor General Office. This is what I wanted to. I hate the idea to discuss about the persons. I want to discuss about the system. To stop, to destroy Soviet-style Prosecutor General Office and to build up absolutely new European-style office in Ukraine. I'm sure we will build this better.
This question is from Neil McCabe of One America News. Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons and sent troops to Iraq at the request of the United States. Any regrets? It's a good question.
Let me be diplomatic. Let me remind you, I'm a former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Look, this is not the case when we can build up the new security system by having just nuclear weapons. It is not working. The current security situation is demonstrating, as I said. The post-war security system is not working. Mechanism of the United Nations Security Council is not working when one of the permanent members of the Security Council is an aggressor. We cannot invite, neither in Georgia, Sandra, not in Ukraine, peacekeepers from the Security Council. This is the crisis of the system. Now we have only one effective mechanism, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But the door for Ukraine was not open the same as for Georgia in the Bucharest summit year 2008. That's true. If you're asking me what would be more effective, not giving up the nuclear weapons in 1994 or open the door for Ukraine in 2008, my answer would be very simple. Door would be more effective. That's true. But we should take into account the reality. We should build up, and this is what I think, bilateral and multilateral new security system, taking into account the new realities of the world. We should make the world more secure. We should improve global security. And Ukraine are ready to be the very strong and very important partner in this process. Georgia would be our partner. Moldova would be our partner with the Transnistria. European Union should be our partner because the eastern part is very close to Russia. And that would be an effective way to keep global security. But again, we should give up the nuclear weapons. but we should develop much more effectively the security guarantee in Budapest Memorandum, no doubt.
Thank you. We heard today a number of panels talk about the political situation in Ukraine and how that is disturbing to international investors. Why is there so much internal political conflict at a time when a unified leadership is needed to get past the economic crisis?
Look, we are a parliamentary presidential republic. For forming the government, we should have a parliamentary coalition. For different reasons, including those for the populistic, some of the factions from coalition leave the coalition. We have a bi-party coalition, 3 parties making decision to leave. Do you know what was the reason? Voting for the budget which was agreed with the IMF. Point number 1. And point number 2, the discussion about the resignation of the Prime Minister. My position, that would be irresponsible to voting for the resignation of the Prime Minister if you don't have a new Prime Minister. I cannot live as a president. I cannot leave country without the government just because of the parliamentary conflict. And I ask my fraction to demonstrate the responsible behavior. And that was the case when we have just my party and party of the Prime Minister stay together in a coalition. And now we have specially declared that the principle of new coalition would be cooperation with IMF, because this is the program of the reform. Implementation of the association agreement. That was my presidential program. And I hate the idea to come back to the populistic things which bring my country to the disaster. Implementation the security of Minsk agreement, despite of the fact they like it or not, because this is the only way to keep peace, stability, and security. Providing the reform of the decentralization, that was my initiative, which was never happened in my country, but we said that we should give the power from the president and prime minister back to the local community. Very simple. Can you imagine that in this difficult economic condition, we increased the local budget as a program of my program as a part of the program for my proposal for decentralization. Local budget increased to 46% in 1 year. Why? Because this is make people closer to the power. They shouldn't go to Kyiv or to the regional center. They should solve all their problems in the framework of the community. And some of the political leaders said that they are not happy with that. They do not support lifting of the immunity for the members of parliament. No, they are normal people. And they should demonstrate the transparency. They hate the immunity. Can you imagine that our judges, no matter on the level of district and on the level of the Supreme Court, has a complete immunity? Even if they kill somebody, they cannot be arrested. Even if they take in the corruption, they cannot be arrested. They should have a very complicated procedure through the parliament, which is not acceptable. This is absolutely not a democratic state. They shouldn't be prosecuted for the decision they make. But if they make a crime, very simple. And this is the program of the reform. But again, I'm very optimistic. I'm thinking that we make a new government in a very quick time. And by the way, the government was criticized for the corruption. And we cannot not react on that. That was, again, the symbol of the rising up the level of influence of the civil society. People in the parliament not happy with some minister, with the government. This is a democracy. Either they elect the new government or go to the early parliamentary election. I hate the idea for the early parliamentary election. Immediately after the Revolution of Dignity, it was the presidential election, just to demonstrate that Ukrainian new power is absolutely legitimate. And I was the first president who won the presidential race in the first tour. Then we have an early parliamentary election, then we have a local election. What else you waiting from the people? You have everything. Making reform. We have a unique period in the history of my country for 4 years not having election, keeping politicians a little bit out from the populistic promises, and implementing reform. And having a unique opportunity to bring the people the results of the reform. I'm really happy with that.
We have two more. Turning to the humanitarian crisis, this question is from Deepak Vyas, who is the head of the World Affairs Council of St. Louis. Greetings from World Affairs Council of St. Louis. What can we do, we in the United States, and even at the local level, what can we do to help Ukraine on humanitarian grounds?
First of all, I want to thank all of you, Ukrainian diaspora, which is extremely active. And I'm constantly in a very close coordination with our diaspora, with the American Humanitarian Organization, for the help you're bringing to facilitate, to make it easier, the humanitarian crisis. What is the main problem? 4 million people, not 200,000 or 300,000 in Transnistria, not disaster, but in Ossetia, this is, Sandra, how many people lives in South Ossetia? About 13 or 16,000, yeah. But 4 million people live in a disastrous humanitarian condition. Don't have money. We pay them the pension and social benefit. On the occupied territory, they receive the pension and social benefits from us. They don't have a job. 90% of the job was liquidated. Russia either destroy or dismantled and withdraw the equipment to Russia. Not have an education, not have services for the elderly people, disastrous situation for the young generation. And these people should have a humanitarian support. Ukraine are ready and happy to give this support. They block any Ukrainian attempt, calling that ideologically based. But this is my citizen, and me as a president wants to help them. And if we can organize this support through the international institution, it is a very important part of our job and our responsibility. So thank you for this, for being so active and for being so deeply involved in this process.
I'm going to join two questions as the final. When and how, as president, are you going to publicly present a detailed strategy for the country's development for the next 5 years? And a way of looking at it is, what do you see as your legacy as president?
It was a very easy question, because when it was my presidential campaign, I said, we have already the program. And this program named Association Agreement with the European Union. This is not just a few pages document. This is several hundred pages, very detailed program of the reform, with more than 1,000 changes of the legislation, changes of the procedure, changes of the country. From the anti-corruption and security and finishing with the investment climate, everything. From the rule of law and finishing for the social policy. And this is my obligation. And I'm proud that in a very few weeks after I was elected as the president, I signed up in Brussels this association agreement. And we, at the same time, coordinated, ratified it, our parliament and European Parliament. And that's what we should work with. That's what we should be coordinated. That's what should unite us. This is deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, association agreement, and this is the program for the reform. What is the legacy? Immediately after the election, they said, what are you dreaming to be after your presidential term? I said, at that time, I'm dreaming that I would be elected member of parliament. European Parliament. Because member of European Parliament can be only member states, and this is my dream. that Ukraine start to be the member of European Union. There is a crisis in the European Union. Some people are extremely disappointed in the European Union. I'm absolutely sure. We, Georgia, this is really our national idea. Now we have very much more close, but very important task for me as a president. The legacy should be peace in Ukraine, a return back occupied territory, return back Crimea. And this is my main challenge, and I'm concentrated on that.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for your wide-ranging presentation, your candor in this question and answer period, and for speaking to us at the World Affairs Councils of America platform. And for those of us who are watching on the live stream here in the United States and around the world, it is a distinct privilege to have you with us here at the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center. Thank you. And I would ask that the audience please remain seated for a brief amount of time so that the President and his party can leave and exit, and then we'll invite the rest of you to enjoy the evening. So, Mr. President, thank you very much.
And I want to thank President Clifton, and I want to thank all of you. I have today the same atmosphere of the hospitality, very strong support, which you demonstrate to Ukraine. The same way like it was done on the 18th of September, year 2014, during my speech in the same building. Thank you very much for that. Please, don't allow anybody to demonstrate the Ukrainian fatigue, because this is the question of principle. This is a question of freedom. This is a question of democracy. That's what unites Ukraine and America. Thank you.